our final standings of the campaign. Liverpool first, Arsenal with a win against Southampton second, Manchester City with a victory against Fulham guaranteed third, Chelsea's win away against Forest fourth, and Newcastle losing at home against Everton. In the end, didn't matter because Aston Villa, of course, lost against Manchester United. Nottingham Forest lose against Chelsea. There are your top 5 places then for the season. For more on this, let's welcome in Naden. We'll hear from Naden in a moment. But Craig, I suppose the big talking point from everything, away from what we see on paper, is that big decision at Old Trafford, which I think changed everything.
Well, first and foremost, it was before the sending off, it was an awful Villa performance, right? But that being said, that was such a major mistake by the referee. And Casey was right, Man United were the better side. There's no doubt about it. They could easily have won this game by 3 or 4, maybe more. But the big question here is, and it's all hypothetical, had that goal been allowed with Villa's 10 men, the mindset changes.
Right.
All of a sudden, you've got that siege mentality with what? You've got 20, 25 minutes, whatever it was left, and a win was probably going to take them into the Champions League. Probably going to guarantee it. And so, therefore, you defend a bit deeper, you get more people behind the ball. They were still trying to push at that point and got caught with a great ball in. So the big question, which we can't answer is, Villa's mindset could have changed if the Rodgers goal had stood. And as I said in the highlights, I've never seen this referee before. He's not FIFA accredited, so he's pretty inexperienced, certainly at Premier League level. And I think we saw that today. His whistle went to his mouth really, really quickly. And Bayandele, the goalkeeper, he did not have it under control. It was a perfectly good goal. And you saw Unai Emery at the end. He thinks it would have been a different story had that goal stood. And in the end, I'm not saying that's cost him a place in the Champions League because there's 38 games, but it went down to the wire. And he's going to be absolutely furious.
And of course, if he hadn't blown his whistle, then it would have all been cleared up via VAR. But as a result of him calling it a foul, it obviously meant they couldn't go to the monitor.
Yeah. And, I've heard some saying that, well, you need to change the rules of VAR. I mean, it's...
Who've heard that?
Oh, here we go. ESPN's not the only channel I watch,
Oh, really?
Yeah, really, but eventually, you have to stop somewhere. You can't just keep changing rules and rules. Unfortunately, this absolutely boils down to a referee who's inexperienced, right. And that's the end of the story. Yeah. The rules of VAR, the way they're set up, are pretty good, and they can't cover every single thing, and they certainly can't cover a referee who makes an inexperienced, horrible decision. It's just one of those things that you have to accept. Listen, VAR's great, but it's not perfect. And today we saw why it's not perfect.
Is there not an argument, Casey, to say, look, for Aston Villa, all you had to do was go and play Manchester United, who've just lost in the Europa League, yet you left the door open for them so long that it shouldn't have been about a refereeing mistake. You should have had this game dead and buried before, but because you decided to put in one of your worst performances of the season at completely the wrong time.
And it starts with a poor back pass, which then gets your goalkeeper sent off right before the half. And then, take all that, and that's 100%. Villa was not playing well from the beginning. But then, 10 men against a Manchester United that has been under a lot of pressure this year. You just came off losing in the Europa League final.
Yep.
You go down 1-0 against 10-men Villa. Could you imagine what the atmosphere in Old Trafford would have been against their own players? And they get bailed out. And then almost instantly after getting bailed out, they go score at the other end. And then the mindset from Villa from going, you know what, in the end, a draw would have seen them through to the Champions League. So you take a goal lead with 10 men knowing that even a point might be what matters.
At no point has he got that ball.
Never. No. I mean, I'm obviously a card-carrying member of the goalkeeping union, but you still have to be objective, and he never had control of the ball. And, I was listening to another game, but watching that match, right?
Does it make sense?
I was kind of had a bunch of monitors in front of me, and I didn't know why VAR didn't intervene because I didn't know that the whistle had blown. So really, it comes down, like Stevie said, there's going to be human error at some stage. It's not going to be perfect.
I'll tell you what, we should mention Unai Emery. normally, I don't know many managers, certainly in the Premier League, who after this game would not have been going absolutely
Oh,
crazy,
for sure.
blaming the referee, jumping on the VAR, jumping on the PGA
Yeah, he did come out and say afterwards that they just weren't
he was
good enough.
he was
Well, he wasn't like that in the tunnel.
He was a little bit.
but that's funny.
yeah,
But
referee.
he could easily at the end of the game come out and just gone absolutely crazy. But he showed a lot of grace. He took it really well. He's a really level-headed guy, and I think we should mention he took it well. The way he's taken
It
it
wasn't the referee's
incredible.
fault they couldn't string 10 passes. 5, no,
And that
10 passes.
Aye, and he mentioned that as
5
well.
passes.
Yeah, and that's it, Nadim, isn't it? When you take
Yeah.
a look at this Villa side who have won so many supporters this season because of their style of play, that first half, they just, as Craig said, they couldn't string a pass together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the red card for Martinez himself, that's consecutive errors. The back pass from Cash, one of the few players who can play Rasmus Højlund in on goal. But then also you look at Emi Martinez and the decision making. Surely for him, he should be able to sense that, in this moment, trying to bring him down here, what is the benefit as such? I think in some ways, if he would have tried to maybe contest it more, maybe tried to tackle him, it's probably not going to be a red card as such. But instead, it's down to 10 and you're such a big player for them as well. And I think, as you guys were saying, for Emery, he's obviously frustrated about that goal itself. But I would say, for as much as the referee is inexperienced, like how many of us would have seen that in real time, as opposed to how clear and obvious it seems in slow motion? That's just my take on that as such. But again, how many people would have thought Villa's possibly worst performance of the season would come away at United, a place where everyone seems to be collecting points in the last few months? This is a United side that haven't beaten a side outside of the bottom three since, I think, January time. And here for Villa, it's out here. Here's your chance. You win this game, or you even get a point and you can be in the Champions League. And instead that performance comes. And I think to highlight something from Villa this year, for as good as they've been in terms of being, when they're on that good run of form and they're so close to the Champions League, like their goal difference is +7. They were talking about how every time they play in a midweek, the next weekend they wouldn't win. I think if they want to be a side that's contesting year in, year out, there needs to be a level of consistency that's there. Because for them, as I say, we can talk about the fact that they didn't get the points, they didn't get the win. They've missed out on goal difference, and their goal difference is +7. I think in reality that shows how weak they've been at the back at times, but also how they've not been able to profit in attack in the way that we're used to seeing them in years gone by.
So if people are saying, well, the VAR, that Stevie said, maybe they can go and look at it if the referee blows his whistle, because it wasn't going to affect, there was no defenders getting back in to stop it, so the goal wouldn't have affected the goal. But then you couldn't make that sort of law or that law change, because generally when a referee blows a whistle in any scenario that involves a goal scoring opportunity, not this one, but other ones, the players stop.
Yeah.
So once the players stop, then you can't go and look at it in VAR, because players will say, well, I stopped because I heard the whistle. Now, this scenario was different because there was an empty net. So it's a very, very difficult position to be in. And Stevie said the bottom line here is the referee just made a mistake. And it's something that he'll have to learn from. Yep. But we see it from assistant referees now. They wait to put the flag up. That's what they're told to do. And referees are told to take a breath and to wait.
But he got excited and blew his whistle.
And he did not.
Meanwhile, Nadim, you were the only one, I believe, when we were making our predictions as to what was going to happen on the final day, that actually had Chelsea qualifying in the top 5. Chelsea fans are certainly not shy in reminding of us that over the last couple of hours. I can tell you that, Nadim. Overall...
Well, he's probably a secret Chelsea season ticket holder from his time in QPR in West London.
Bit posh for Nadim.
Oh, yeah.
Chelsea's a bit posh.
I forgot about that.
And you can't be wrong all the time.
In the end, this game wasn't very good, but Chelsea won't care. Interesting stuff from Enzo Maresca, I thought, afterwards, coming out all guns blazing, basically saying, you all doubted me, you all said the squad was too young. Look, I've proved you wrong. He swore, obviously, as well in that statement. But I kind of think there's got to be a little bit of humility there, isn't there, if you're Chelsea? Because really, you shouldn't have come down to this last day of the season, given the start of the campaign that you had.
No, Dan Thomas. I think come the end of the season, you keep all those receipts, and if you do something good, you make sure to remind people of what they said.
Okay.
And I think for Chelsea, they have received a little bit of criticism throughout the year, and he's saying, this is real, this is what it is. Obviously, in the end, somewhere down the road, he'll probably be losing his job as such, but with this young squad, he was the one that never said, we're not going to win the league, we're not going to win the league. We were trying to hype it, we were hyping up a little bit. but then they fell off. We started to lose trust in them. But I think as you looked at that at 5 or 6 at the, vying for this top position, you could see the inconsistencies that some of these teams had. And I just felt with Chelsea, they would actually be able to find a way, especially going up against the Nottingham Forest side, who in some ways, they're still very, very happy with their season. They're in Europe next year. Yes, it's the Conference League, but they're in Europe. Flashback a year ago, and they were fighting relegation up until maybe the last 2 weeks of the season. So yes, there was that sense of Chelsea actually had more European pedigree in this moment to be able to manage it. And as you said, it was not the greatest of games, but Chelsea found a way to do it. And I think in recent weeks, they have just been able to keep enough momentum to get across the line. So I back them. Obviously, there's a very good chance I was going to be wrong. But Dan, to be honest, the one which is wilder still was loosely, I backed Man United to be able to get a result against Aston Villa a couple of weeks ago. At the time, I felt insane for saying it. And I was concerned that this was going to go out on the internet. But it just goes to show football. It's a crazy old game, not least of all for everyone that's played there. You always want to try and finish the season well.
No, the biggest
You need to try and finish the season well.
Oh, my
The biggest bragger on this show is a Frenchman who used to broadcast out of Paris. He's not here today.
Yeah, don't start
So
taking
there's
those
no
flowers.
point trying to steal his thunder, Nathan. Look, what we do know is
Sorry, my
Maresca
bad.
reads and listens to opinions. And Maresca is prickly with those opinions. And sometimes you don't want to leave yourself open to other people having that thought because they'll just keep prodding away.
Right.
But at the end of the day, he has done a better job than the others
In a mediocre league.
that were in there. And, yeah, I mean, in the league this year, that outside some of the top boys, I mean, the bottom, you look at Tottenham and Man United, and then the 3 that got relegated, and the West Hams of this world, and Palace came strong, but he's done the job. They're in the Champions League, so they were never in it. I know they were in the title race. We discussed it at the start of the season. In terms of the league position, they were in it. I mean, they were unlikely to go all the way, but he's done and produced and delivered the remit, I'm sure, that he was given when he came in, is make this team better, get in the Champions League, and they're also in the conference final, which they're playing this midweek, which he's also not chuffed about because he had to play today. So his ending the season is not a very happy chappy. Stevie?
Well, he needs to be careful because, these journalists never forget. They never forget. And he's actually, he needs to... They found a way, as you said, at the end of the season, because they were as bad today as they've been the last 4 or 5 weeks, but they've got results.
Yes.
And that's what it's about. But it could have been so different. If Chris Wood scores in the first half, just for the end, to put Forest 1 up, this could have been, we could be talking a whole different ball game here. Because that's what Forest love to do. Get ahead and then shut up shop. That's why they were in this position. But Maresca needs to be careful. You can't, keep your mouth closed again and don't. People are just sitting waiting for you to make a mistake now. Guaranteed.
But I think you could have done it with a little bit of humor instead of like the animosity. Just kind of say, yeah, look, I know we had a young team. I know a lot of you didn't think we were going to be able to do this, but we stayed together. We got results when we needed to, and we've qualified for Champions League.
The blasphemy that disappoints me, Casey. I don't think we need that.
I don't think anybody... I wonder who's... I think people have maybe asked him at times during the season in a press conference about, do you think the team is too young?
I don't think that's something that we talked about. We talked about it in the title race with the lack of experience.
I don't think he's talking about us.
Yeah.
I mean, he may well be. But I don't think he's...
It'd be a lot stronger than what he said if it was.
I just, the bit that annoys me more? I would understand what he's saying if his team were playing well.
Yeah.
But when you've given us what they're giving us and scraping by, then just cool your jets. If you've got a reason to have a go at people, then that's fine in my book. But the way that your team's played since Christmas, I mean, you've scraped it. So just cool your jets a little bit.
Meanwhile, Natham City celebrating third. How times have changed.
Yeah. Oh, incredible, Dan. A third place finish, you would have thought it. The stuff dreams are made of. No, but genuinely, in that middle third of the season, coming on shows like this, I was getting hammered.
Rightly
You
so.
remember they lost 6 games in a row. It looked like everything was going wrong. Yeah, thank you. They had injuries, they had Pep pulling his hair out, scratching his face, the works.
Well, he hasn't got any
But
here.
in the last part of the season now, this final third, Yeah. I think they went 11 games unbeaten or something. And for as much as it wasn't as glamorous as, say, we'd seen in years gone by, the goal became very clear. They have to qualify for the Champions League. And I think the way we discuss it in this day and age, you talk about the financial benefit of it and what it could mean in terms of your planning and so on. So the necessity was there. And then people were right to doubt them. I remember being on the show with the guys before saying who's going to finish top 5. And there were a few question marks about City, and rightly so. But they found a way. Certain players have stepped up in a bigger moment. And now as they head to the Club World Cup in 3 weeks' time, there's a better feel around the place. And today going to Fulham, I thought this could have been a really, really tricky tie. But overall, in the way that City played, they nullified the attack that Fulham had. And whenever they went forward, they felt dangerous themselves. So that's more like what we've seen from City. And yes, maybe the squad isn't in a position where you expect them to go next season and win the league title again. But it's trending upwards again after being at probably the lowest point we've seen in the last 10 years.
Can you imagine, though, being any of those players? This Club World Cup that keeps popping up, there would have been a mutiny.
They're dreading it.
Can you imagine finishing a long, hard season, particularly one that was as arduous as it was for City, where they were the favourites, then they hit a huge slump, came back, better but not great, lost the cup final, qualified for the Champions League. All you want's a rest. Like all the other players.
Or going with the national team for a couple weeks and then get a rest.
I don't want that either. I don't want a rest. I'm thinking about booking. Players are booking their holiday, and this is I know it's a different subject.
Yeah, it is. I don't think we need to go.
But it's just. I think it's just absolutely ridiculous the scenario we're in that these players now are going to have to go away and play in this.
But I thought Nedum was extra kind to Man City because.
Well, of course, it's Nedum.
I know that, but Ederson had to make a couple big saves, or that match could have got a lot more interesting. It wasn't as simple as 2-0 suggests.
Meanwhile, Stevie, Newcastle won and watched, didn't they?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, dear me. You lose against Arsenal, lose and then obviously at home against Everton, yet you still qualify.
I mean, I think we all fell into the trap of Everton's got nothing to play for and they're going to win 3 or 4-0.
Yeah. That's quite a normal trap to fall into.
Yeah, but since Moyes has come in, this Everton team has been different. And regardless of having nothing to play for, they weren't just going to lie down. And the fact that they get through having lost 1-0 at home is an absolute shocker.
Yeah.
And I personally, when the final whistle went, I mean, you talk about breathing properly for once. For 20 minutes, you could see the pain in everybody's face. Yeah. I mean, the one-on-watch is
They were very happy when that second goal went in.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't like Pickford was standing on his head. Like Newcastle just looked so off.
Even the draw, as it was at the time at Old Trafford, when Everton scored, that draw was knocking Newcastle out.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it was for them, in some way I'm glad they've gotten in because they're an entertaining side. I think they've been one of the better sides this season. Faltered a bit at the end, but I'm glad they're back. And I tell you what, had they not been in the Champions League next year, and at one point in the second half they were not, the Isak question, which will arise anyway, would have been huge. Because if they were in the Europa League, I think Isak would have been like, he may still be on the door, but they'll say, no, we're not selling. We're in the Champions League, we are not selling. But had they slipped into that Europa League, it would have been tough to hang on to him. It may still be tough, but it would have been even tougher to hang on to him.
Last word on Newcastle to you, Nedum?
Yeah, they can get ready for some derbies next year because Sunderland are back. That's all I'm going to say. That's Newcastle. 2 big games coming up for you next year. Let's go.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's very true.
It makes every game a cup final when the champions are in town. But saying that, apart from the finish of the season, everybody else has to step up.
Right.
If Liverpool produce what they did, if they stay as they are, then they've still got a great chance, and that's why they're favourites.
Yeah.
Now, if they sign Florian Wirtz, there's no question, on paper, you would think it makes them better. But whether it's Florian Wirtz or anybody else, they do need to make a couple of signings, because this is the perfect time. You want to create better competition, more competition, a few new faces, a couple of different characters in the dressing room. It keeps everything going, everything bubbling, and gets you ready for the start of the season.
Wirtz would be great, wouldn't he? I mean, expensive, but great, because he's a player, we touched on it the other day with Jan, he's a player that they haven't got. Because Szoboszlai, does a bit of both, McAllister does a bit of everything, Gravenberch plays a bit deeper, Curtis Jones does a little bit of everything as well and has played particularly well. But Wirtz is just a guy, he just fits that kind of number 10, getting in these little spaces, getting turned. You know, it's not just about the balls that he plays in. You watch him, he goes in these mazy dribbling runs as well. Liverpool have that from a wider area, but they don't have that kind of player from a central area. And yeah, it would be well over 100 million, but it would be a big statement to the rest of the league. We're not resting on our laurels. We're going out there and we're going to try and cement ourselves as the dominant force in English football, like Man City did for a few years.
I think if it is, sorry, Case, I think if it is Wirtz though, I think Liverpool can get away with it because we've seen enough of Diaz and we've seen enough of Gakpo at centre forward that if Wirtz plays a little deeper instead of Zlobozlai.
Diaz isn't going to be there next
Diaz
season.
is going
He's going to go past them.
Whether it's Diaz or anybody else, and it's not a centre forward as such, Liverpool have shown that the movement that they create, somebody like Wirtz can fit in without a centre forward. If it is somebody like Gakpo, or even playing Wirtz, and then you've got Szoboszlai running past him, getting in the box. So if it is
perfect,
Florian Wirtz,
give them the trophy now.
Is that one of the questions though that you've won the title by almost like a makeshift number 9 at times? Do you think you can do that again? Do you think, or preferably?
Well, City did it.
Yeah.
Without a striker. Remember when Aguero left and there was a void?
Right. But can you do that year after year?
But then the next year he went out and signed Haaland.
Yeah.
The majority would stand up and be counted. And you can see what it meant to Trent. Because I'm sure under that calm exterior, inside, you know his heart's pounding, you know his head going, I want to have a good ending. And I'm like Craig, I'm really glad to say that it ended well.
And those tears, they're real, and people will be out there saying, the guy's, he's a Liverpool lad who has been at one of the best clubs in the world, and he's played some of the best stuff. He's won everything at this club. And I'm sure the emotions are high because he's leaving a bunch of his mates and in his hometown. But he's gone on to pastures new.
Yeah, and he's gone to Real Madrid.
He's gone to Real Madrid. But I really like what Jurgen Klopp said and what Jurgen Klopp did. Because Jurgen Klopp, when asked, could have come out and tried to curry favour with the fans and go, well, the fans can, they have their say and all that, and he could have played that old card so that he could have looked good. But he was strong. He was strong in what he said about the booing of Trent Alexander-Arnold.
He said he switched off the TV, didn't he?
And there is no doubt that helped the situation because of the respect they have for the former manager.
Nathan, just feel it kind of ties a nice bow for Liverpool on the whole season.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I think for Alexander-Arnold, he would have been so anxious heading to the stadium today, given the fact he is a Liverpoolian, like this is his football club. And yes, he is leaving, but he still has so much in common with that crowd. And I think the biggest thing realistically, as Stevie said when he was first booed a couple of weeks ago, is that if you have a problem with someone, just don't clap. The booing takes it to that next level. And I think if you look at those pictures there, you can see some people clapping, some people not. But in reality, what Alexander-Arnold would have felt is something that would make him feel proud. As he said, he's probably never felt so loved. And he's lifting a Premier League title. Liverpool's second, his second. And he's doing it at home. And people have gone, for him, it must feel like a complete role reversal. 2 weeks ago, he's getting booed as he's coming on. And now he's getting a chance to lift the Premier League trophy in his last game for Liverpool in his home stadium. Yes, he's going on to pastures new, but there's a human side to things. And for him to be able to feel that, it's always a privilege to look back and realise that we played football, to be able to play it in a crowd. Well, he's lived his dream. He's lived his boyhood dream for his boyhood club. And the last game that he'll remember is one where he got a chance to lift the Premier League trophy. It is the stuff of dreams, and it could have been a nightmare. But he's had the support of Klopp, he's had the support of others. And now all those people made sure that they showed some level of appreciation for all the work that he's done. And yes, the relationship might be strained. But in reality, that moment that Liverpool shared today with him as well, it's one that they'll never forget.
Good stuff, Nathan. Thank you very much. Any other predictions you want to bring up that you got right during the season before we let you go?
Oh, there isn't any.
I'm not working tomorrow. Have a good one.
Hey, well, thank you very much, Nathan. 2 days in a row. Never going to see it. Let's just remind you how things finished then at the bottom half of the table. Saints, Ipswich and Leicester obviously down. Spurs are 1-0 up. We should all lumped on Spurs at 1-0 that Brighton were going to win that game because they did, of course, win it by 4-1. Wolves, meanwhile, finish it in 16th. United in 15th. If you look at these numbers, the numbers for Bayern are ridiculous. 344 goals. For Borussia Dortmund, 103. Barcelona, 101. Gemma caught up with Lewandowski after the game.
Yes, with Robert Lewandowski. It was the minute 17 in this game. You already made 2 clinical finishes, and Rafinha tells you 4 more to be the Pichichi. What did you think at that moment?
I was laughing because, thinking about Pichichi, it's like, of course, wasn't in my head like, just like that I should to do everything to win this. No, for me it was more important to win the titles with the team. Of course, that injury was in the bad timing, and I know maybe when I play some minutes against Real Madrid, some before the games, maybe I score 1, 2, 3 goals, and that is different, But also I lose also the time with the training session, and I try to come back very, very fast, and sometimes, it's the football, and I enjoy a lot this season because we achieve amazing season, we achieve the titles, and now we can enjoy it.
Yeah, and anyways, your personal season, your numbers are amazing, 42 goals in 52 games. Are you ready to keep rocking again at 36? So next season to be repeating this?
Scoring more goals than my age is the huge challenge, especially every year, every next year. So yeah, it's like that's make me proud, If I scoring in this season more than 40 goals, even that I'm gonna be 37 years. But I'm feeling good. I did everything, and of course, so many people see on me as because of the age. But on the pitch, even during the training session, I still feel like before, and that's make me that still I can help the team, that I can help the club to be on the top. And if we winning the titles, is I think the most important thing. It means that we did amazing job.
Hansi Flick said that he will put 8 to 10 to qualification this year. What is your number for the season of Barcelona this year?
If we, without one game, I'm going to say 9 of 10.
And just the last question, I guess when you think about next season, it's repeating the same, but with the Champions League.
Every season is different. Of course, we have to know that the next season everyone's gonna try to beat us. It's always, if you are on the top, you have to be more motivated. You have to be more ready for everything and for everyone. And I think we are growing very fast. We have so many young players. They grow very, very fast. And I think that with this experience, what we achieved this year, we can improve in the next season. And I hope so that we're gonna do next step, because even that it doesn't matter how many titles you already won. It's more important how many titles you win. So this, I think that will be our challenge for the next season.
Gemma Solera, of course, has been following Barcelona all season for us. Joins us pitch side from San Mamés. What's interesting, Gemma, is at the start of the campaign, there were so many questions about Robert Lewandowski, about Hansi Flick coming in, about Barcelona overall. Yet Lewandowski's performances this season have kind of encapsulated everything that's been right about Barca this campaign.
Absolutely, Dan. And a lot of this is for what you're talking about expectations, because at the beginning of the season, we thought after a winless season, the last with Xavi, we thought this would be the year of Real Madrid, of Mbappe, and all these things, because Barcelona were unable to reinforce because of to have more signings than Olmo, and Hansi Flick. There were concerns because he wasn't successful in his last period with Germany. Lewandowski wasn't successful the last season he played with Xavi, so a lot of questions mark, but somehow Hansi Flick put the mentality winning back again, and he put that verticality with the style of play of Barcelona, and somehow the youngs brought this baby Barca energy that it's contagious with players like Robert Lewandowski, and brought a lot of fun, and Barcelona had a lot of fun this season, had a success with the domestic treble, and actually they had fun until the very last second of La Liga with that late goal by Dani Olmo, 3-0 win here in a very difficult stadium, and they put a 9, Lewandowski 8 to 10, Hansi Flick. I think it's a very good season for Barca.
Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. It's incredible. When your team suddenly does well out of nowhere, all the fans suddenly pop up. We've seen Spurs supporters this week, and it's the turn of Chelsea fans over the last few hours. who want to remind us in quite some detail that we wrote off Chelsea and their chances of finishing in the Champions League. But it's not just their supporters as well. We mentioned this during the show. Here was Enzo Maresca in the press conference after that win against Forest.
I didn't have any doubt, to be honest, about the players. I said that the doubt was from outside. All the ones that they have the answer, or all the ones that they have the truth. They were saying that we are too young, we are not good enough. They were waiting for Villa drop points in case we want to achieve Champions League. And they were saying that we were not able to win in this pitch because too young, because not experience. And unfortunately for them, they have been all wrong. All the ones, that they have the truth and they have the answer for everything. So in English, I would say F off to all of them because the player, they deserve that.
So a lot of questions in that regard to the ESPN FC panel, especially Craig.
Why?
How does it feel to see Chelsea prove you wrong after being written off as too young, too inexperienced and not good enough for the Champions League? Big pressure, final day, and they delivered. Blue is in your blood. Craig, be happy for your former team.
Shut up. I mean, we didn't write them off. I just didn't think they'd get in the top four. I thought they would have been better teams. But most people think it's been a pretty average Premier League, apart from his nibs sat next to me. But I think at the end of the day, they've done.
You want to say that again?
It's the old mediocre discussion again.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
There's nobody here said they weren't good enough.
We just picked four. We thought there'd been four better teams,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think is fair enough.
We were just talking about the way they were playing.
That
And they were
wasn't good
playing
enough.
garbage.
That wasn't good enough.
No,
the way they were playing wasn't good
No,
enough.
the way they were playing was great.
Oh, initially, yes.
Yeah,
but
and then
up
Up until December, but
Yeah.
until then, and in the last 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, when we're
But they
doing
proved
the
you
top
wrong,
five,
Stephen. You said they weren't going to make the Champions League, and they have.
But listen,
all right.
listen.
So what?
Newcastle have been in the Champions League recently. Aston Villa have been in the Champions League recently with a new manager. At the end of the day, it's a decent achievement. But the way he's talking there, you think like he's swiped the board and all domestic trophies. You know what I mean? And nobody saw it coming. They clambered in the top. As Stevie said on the show, they clambered into the top four. It could have been so different today at Forest. If Forest had taken the chance that Chris Wood had, but it didn't. And Chelsea made it. Let's see what they're made of next year.
Casey, were you surprised with? Were any of you surprised that with so much on the line, Aston Villa and Newcastle choked in their matches today?
A little bit, and I think particularly Villa, and we talked about the circumstances with that, how poorly they played the first half, the back pass, the red card, the goal disallowed. I mean, there was a lot of things that went against Villa. I think it's also Newcastle at home, sneaking in the back door because they didn't have against an Everton that they should have been comfortable with. Forced at times up in second, third, particularly when Man City was going through their issues, and then fell off at the end. So look, I give Chelsea a ton of credit for grinding it out.
Oh, don't start.
No. But I also agree with the conversation a few weeks ago that there was a group that weren't as competitive as they needed to be
at the top of the table.
I didn't think they were going to make
now
it.
You're saying, oh no.
No, I can give them credit. I still didn't think they were going to make it.
Villa surprised me because they really lacked some guile in the the final third. They hardly got in the final third in the first half. But they had Tielemans on the bench because he's not fully fit, and he's been a big player in terms of the passing for them. They had Kamara and Onana in the middle of the park, and none of the two of them are creative. And the one creative player they had, and Marco Asensio, albeit he wasn't really in the game much, he had to be taken off when Robin Olsen came in after the sending off. And Marcus Rashford, who's been pretty good for them, couldn't play because he's a lone player. But even at that, I was shocked that when they're playing Man United, who we know have been so bad, they've just been beaten in the Europa League final. Yeah, it's the last home game and all that sort of stuff. But they couldn't keep the ball. I mean, Villa couldn't pass, and Ollie Watkins up front looks like somebody who thinks you know, maybe that move to Arsenal would have been all right, or maybe I'm going to get him.
It looks hard done by, doesn't
he
it?
just isn't that. He's not even putting himself about like he once was, and his touch and his hold-up play, whenever it went up to him, just wasn't very good.
Casey, what would you have done if a poor back pass led to a clear scoring chance to the opposition?
I would have agreed with Stevie earlier, saying I probably would have thought I was faster than I was.
Right. How much is in a goalkeeper's mind that it's only Højlund, who we know has got a really poor... No, honestly.
I think the other thing that you need to think about, and I think Nadem in the show kind of briefly, kind of skirted around it, but first half, and you find yourself in a really horrible position that isn't necessarily your own doing, is it better to get sent off and have to play the rest of the match a man down, or concede the goal?
But that's something you have to think about in split seconds.
Really quickly, exactly. And that's why so much of goalkeeping is decision making. And I'm sure you talk to Martinez later, he's kind of like, yep, maybe I should have just let him go, score the goal, 1-0 down, and they had to be better the second half than they were the first. But as a man down, goalkeeper down, substitution because you had to put the goalkeeper on, it completely changed.
How many times were you sent off?
Twice.
Oh, okay, so not anything.
No.
Flattening somebody.
Same as that, kind of outside the box, both occasions. One of them was at the New Den, but it was like the 92nd minute. So you say, okay, you take the man down, you win the game, you take 3 points. And the other time was with the Sounders, and unfortunately, it was against Herc. And
oh wow,
Herc
really?
had come through, and I thought I could beat him to the ball, and I was a little late.
Yes, I can't believe you vocalized that.
And he tried to flick it over me, and I kind of did the old, oh no, it was unintententional. And
You're quite old at that stage.
I was an old man.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking about Nadem, there's too many people coming on.
We're talking about her.
He mentioned,
Not really.
It was a great transition, Craig.
well, Casey mentioned Nadem about 5 minutes ago. And it's kind of, as we say in Scotland, it's kind of stuck in my craw.
What's that?
Well, there's too many people coming on this show now blowing smoke up their own backside.
What, because they got the predictions right?
Yeah, Nadem was on the show.
Jan texted me as well saying, I told you Man United would beat Villa.
What's this show become? We've got Frank LeBoeuf, who whenever he gets 100 things wrong, when he gets one right, he comes on and I told you that. Yeah. Another one, we even have a Spanish version of it.
Yeah,
Luis Garcia.
Luis, yeah.
We've got a Spanish version, an English version, and a French version.
There we go.
Every one of them. Not a peep out of them when they're wrong.
Yeah.
Not a peep.
There's not a Scottish version because you're always wrong.
Correct.
At least admit it, right?
Yeah.
Jack Grealish, Craig, was not included on City's squad versus Fulham. Pep Guardiola said, selection, where should he move this summer transfer window?
Somewhere that's a long way from the bright lights of anywhere.
Right.
There is no doubt that outside activities have taken its toll on his Man City career. There's no doubt about that. Maybe some injuries, but the things are all interlinked. And it's a well-known fact that Jack Grealish likes to enjoy himself. And that's fine. But back when Casey and I were playing, and before that when Stevie was playing, that's a different era. And I think he's suffering the consequences of that. Now, where he's going to go, you're talking about they want a transfer fee for him because they paid $100 million for him. He's not on peanuts, so he's big wages, but he needs to play a lot. I don't know if I can see a home for him back at Villa. People would say, well, Unai Emery's not his type of player. No, Marcus Rashford, was he Unai Emery's type of player? You got to tune out of him. Does he go back to his hometown club? I don't know. I think it's crystal clear, though, that I think his time at City is probably done and dusted.
Stevie, does the name George Sefton mean anything to you?
George? Yeah, well, George was the announcer at Anfield.
Exactly. He is stepping down at the end of the season, obviously now. Any interesting stories or interactions with him?
I don't know if I ever met George.
But you just heard his voice?
You just hear his voice.
Oh.
And when I was playing, I used to wonder, I wonder what he looks like. And I think eventually I saw him, and it wasn't until a couple of days later that I knew it was him.
Right.
I saw him walking through the outside the dressing room used to be a hallway.
Yes.
Down to the manager's office and the players' lounge. And I saw him one day walking, or I saw this guy walking, and then I happened to mention to somebody, and he said, "Did you not see him the other day?" Because we were all coming off the bus.
Right.
He said, "That's George." I was like, "All right." I mean, this was about 10 years after I'd been at Anfield.
He never had a photo with you or anything like
No,
that?
no.
Wow.
I don't even think I ever met George.
I think it's much more common now that they're kind of down on the pitch and doing more,
More
you know,
interaction.
I agree. I mean, back in the day, yeah, they were kind of up somewhere and there just wasn't the interaction. That
Have I
there
told you the
is.
story when I was the stadium announcer for the 2010 Champions League final?
Oh, no. How'd that go?
No, that's the story.
That's it? That was it?
That's it. It's very good. What a
And how,
performance.
and how can you balls that up?
I didn't balls it up. I was
did?
brilliant. No.
You balls it
UEFA paid me with a €500 note.
Oh, there you go.
Did you have any clever comments, or did you manage to hold back?
No, I had to be good, didn't I?
Ah.
It was very tempting.
must have been
no,
tough.
it was just.
You didn't-
Is that why you're praising yourself?
Exactly.
Because
And I don't think Chonoglu was playing for Inter at the time, so we were all right.
And you didn't say the pitchside reporter was 4 out of 10, did you?
No, I didn't. No, but there you go. You've got to set the bar high and then they get standards higher. Thanks for bringing that back up. Thanks for bringing that up.
She's gone back to her flat in tears tonight.
No, she hasn't. Gemma
Crying
doesn't
around,
mind. For
She'll be
Casey,
crying into your paella. She'll still have some left in the freezer.
I doubt it.
Well, you thought you
straight
thought.
in the bin.
Did you hear about the story where he thought the rice
Was salt.
was salt? On the rice anyway. That's a lot of salt.
Big paella in Spain.
Oh, yeah, right, we don't need the story.
It wasn't the best.
We don't need the story.
Casey,
Well, I didn't want
Billy,
to
you're
do it.
announcing.
It took ages, didn't it?
it was not. It was a lovely afternoon.
Although we did get
It
some
was
ages.
ruined by your.
You ages.
Well, I don't know, it wasn't round for me because we got some free red wine.
Yes, you did.
And also we saw a game of tennis between the two.
This is the excitement of our
tennis.
trip now.
What game of tennis? A proper game of...
There was 2 people that actually can play tennis or playing tennis.
For Casey, a few years ago, there was a
went to the
buzz
whole
around
competition.
MLS, especially during the start of Inter Miami. Lots of people wanted to join the league, and American players like Pulisic and McKennie seemed to be the game changers of US soccer. What went wrong?
yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on right now with, I think, MLS made a decision to go behind a couple paywalls. And I think it took a lot of eyes just off of all the clubs. And that's, I think, going to be addressed at some stage, because I think it's difficult when you're trying to grow that you take the casual viewer who then becomes a more regular viewer out of the equation. Look, there can only be a buzz for so long when you're going to watch one player. You know, if you support Liverpool, if you support Spurs or Chelsea or whoever that Craig
He
was
doesn't
with,
support anybody.
you know, but if you support the team, when you market a situation where you're supporting an individual, and then you went, oh, I saw him play, that was great. Okay, now what's in town? Oh, there's a concert. Oh, there's this. You're hoping that you're building supporters for your club, not marketing an individual that's going to be there for a short period of time. And I understand why MLS did it. I understand the situation, but they've got to find a way to come out of it.
I'm like that with NFL, really.
No one cares. That is it. That brings us to the end of today's show. Craig, have a lovely holiday. You're off for 3 weeks now, yeah? Have a lovely time.
4.
Oh, 4 weeks? Fantastic.
5.
Fantastic.
6.
Back for the club. The photo on
Hey,
Club World Cup.
I will be here for the Club World Cup.
Just a reminder, ESPN FC with you every single day throughout the off-season in Europe. Plenty for us to talk about. We'll be back tomorrow. Be sure to join us.